Member for Vancouver Mount Pleasant.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I'm very delighted to enter into this debate around the referral motion on Bill 24. Now, the public might be wondering, what does a referral motion mean and what exactly are we talking about? So let me just backtrack for a minute here. A referral motion, just for the record, it means that whenever we're debating a bill, and usually is put forward by the opposition for consideration when the bill is of significant importance. In many ways, in this sense, that when the bill is put forward for debate in this House, that there's been deficient or insufficient consultation and input from the public. And in this instance, we're talking about a significant bill, a bill that I think will change the face of agricultural lands in British Columbia forever. That's what we're faced with. We're talking about a bill that the government wants to rush through, even though before the election they said that, in fact, they said on the public record, that they would protect agricultural lands. But of course, during the election, there was no talk about bringing forward this bill, that this version of how the government would protect agricultural lands. There was no talk of that. And in fact, there was no mention of it about the ALR in the Liberal election platform in 2013, Mr. Speaker. And in May of 2013, during the election, there was a questionnaire that was put out and is publicized, is on the public record, so the public can see this, and the government needs to be held account to it, and that is a article that's been put out by the Country Life in BC magazine. All the parties were asked to answer the question and to provide a response. And the Liberal Party, on behalf of all their candidates, in fact, did provide the response to this question. And the question is, would you work with the ALC to ensure agricultural land continues to be available for agriculture and not used for port, dam, and transportation, industrial, and residential development? End quote. And the answer from the Liberal Party on behalf of all the candidates, and that is to say then all the elected MLAs from the Liberal Party side that are sitting here in this legislature, in this assembly, the response was yes. Now, people actually trusted that and believed in that, and people actually voted in some instances based on that answer. We got letters. I know I've got letters. I know that the government members got letters. We all got letters from the public telling us about the importance of the ALR. And in fact, I just read another letter from an individual who says that they would not have supported someone who did not support the ALR, Mr. Speaker. And I think that these are important issues here as to why, as one reason, at least one reason why the government ought to support this referral motion. And in doing this referral motion, all that it means, Mr. Speaker, is for the motion to be sent to a committee, and to which there are a number of different committees in this assembly, where people go out then to talk to the community about this very bill, to get their input, to listen to them about their input on all sides, whether they support it or oppose it, or they have any views around it, to invite that input and to consider it before a final decision is made. That's all that we're asking for, Mr. Speaker. Not for the government, although I would say we would love it if the government would just kill Bill 24. Yeah. But that said, we will accept the approach where the government will just take a step back and respect the voices of British Columbians and to allow for them to provide input into this important bill through the committee before it's being voted on, before any final decisions made. And who knows? just maybe in that process, that the government members might actually hear something from the public that they hadn't thought about, that they may actually see some value in considering the opinions of British Columbians on the future of British Columbia's agricultural lands, an important part of BC's economy, an important part of our landscape that contributes to food production and food security in British Columbia. And maybe we'll all learn important lessons. And maybe all of us who have a point of view about agricultural lands will actually see something different and be enlightened with information that we hadn't thought about. Wouldn't that be something to actually take that time and to invite input from the public and to listen to that input and to create out of that process better legislation for British Columbians on behalf of British Columbia? I would argue that that would be the way to go. I would argue that this is now the opportunity for us to do exactly that. The referral motion, of course, is not being called for just by MLAs. I know that the government members may well say, well, yeah, you know, you guys are in opposition, so of course you want to oppose everything, and so of course you want to delay everything, and that's why you have this referral motion on the table. But interestingly, the most important people that I think the government failed to listen to around the future of agricultural lands are the very stakeholders themselves, the very people whose livelihood depend on it, the very people who have invested their life and continue to invest in this industry for the future. They have opinions that they want the government to consider as well. They want the government to step back in the passage of Bill 24. They want the government to listen to them and to consider their opinions before this bill is passed. Now, who are some of those people, Mr. Speaker? There's a long list of them, Mr. Speaker, to which I will put on some of their voices on the record here so that the government can get a glimpse of what the stakeholders are saying, what constituents are saying around Bill 24, and why they want to see the bill be referred to committee and for the government to slow down the process in its passage. Before I do that, though, Mr. Speaker, I also want to just point out this issue as well. The government, you'll recall, after the 2013 election, said that they were going to embark on a core review. And one of those big processes was to invite, people and for the government to examine the process of how they're going to find savings within the system, within the government services and the programming. And the minister responsible for the core review has said, and I quote, that the public will have an opportunity to provide input to core review as part of the Committee on Finance and Government Services budget consultation. Now, interestingly, the chair of the Committee on Finance and Government Services actually had no idea that the consultation on the core review was part of his committee's mandate or terms of reference, for that matter. But that said, the minister responsible for core review said that's what they were going to do. And through this process, through the core review process, we now actually have Bill 24 being debated and tabled in this legislature. And the Minister of Core Review, by his own admission, said, and I quote, "I know that we could have done a better job of consultations, and I take my mea culpa." He actually said that on March the 28th in the print media in the Vancouver Sun as it relates to Bill 24. Even the government minister who was responsible for the core review, who claims that the Finance Committee was going to be doing work around this, admits that the government has not done its job in terms of consultation related to Bill 24. Yet here we are in this House debating Bill 24, and the government is in a big hurry to push Bill 24 through and have its passage dealt with before this session of the House adjourns. The government, in fact, the minister responsible for the core review, if he was true to his own statement about taking his own mea culpa, wouldn't he actually show that with genuine sincerity by stepping back? Contrition helps, but with sincerity as well. And the way to show contrition and sincerity is to actually admit, not only admit he was wrong, but to take action to rectify that very mistake. And his opportunity is right here and now to support this referral motion to allow for that to happen, Mr. Speaker. So the member from Kuchina is absolutely right. Contrition here is something that the Minister for the Core Review can take heart, that there is an opportunity for him to display just that. And by supporting this referral motion and to allow for further debate and consultation to take place in the broader community, the very people that the government themselves, by their own admission, had neglected to invite to the table and to consult with them to hear their points of view around what should be done with respect to the future of the agricultural land reserve in British Columbia. The importance of this debate centers around not just credibility for the government and for the Minister of Agriculture and the Minister for the Core Review and the Premier, but it centers around the future of British Columbia. Just think for a moment what this land means and the value of that land. Is it simply to develop on this land for a short-term gain, or is it much more than that? Many people would argue, including those of us on the opposition side, would argue that it is much more than that, because once you lose that prime agricultural land, the important agricultural land, which is only, by the way, 5% of the land base in British Columbia, once you lose it, you may never get it back. And if you don't get it back, so much for your opportunity as a province to ensure our food safety and security. We will have lost those opportunities forever, Mr. Speaker. And that's what is at stake here. There is a reason why the agricultural land reserve, when it was brought to this legislature 40 years ago, has lasted all these years. There is a reason why it has such broad support in the community across partisan lines on this issue, because everybody values agricultural lands. And people know in their heart of hearts what those lands mean to us as human beings who rely on food and the production of food, and for our economy who rely on long-term sustainable economic opportunities into the future. Mr. Speaker, that's what agricultural lands contribute to British Columbia. It is so much more than a short-term gain for the purposes of development. It is so much more than that. Mr. Speaker, I was talking about the people earlier, about the people who support the agricultural lands, or the people who argue and are urging the government to take a step back and to slow down in this process with the passage of Bill 24. Now, in my own community, and I know, well, minus community gardens, I would venture to say that in Vancouver, Mount Pleasant, we don't have you know, acres and acres of farmland. I accept that.
No cows.
I accept that. I live in an urban center. I accept that. We try the best that we can by creating community gardens. We do that as best as we can, even using roof gardens on buildings to try to grow some food. We use school grounds to grow some vegetables and fruits for the children so that they would have a food product that they can take home, but also in that process, the very important process, to learn about food production. As the former Minister of Agriculture often say to us urbanites, you know, the package of meat that you get from Safeway doesn't come from Safeway, as an example. He often says the bag of apples that you buy out of the supermarket didn't grow out of the counter from the supermarket. They come from farms all throughout British Columbia. The milk that you drink didn't just magically come in a carton. They come from farm animals in a farm. That's where it comes from. And it is about time us urbanites, and I admit us urbanites, and the youth, the young people in our communities learn about that. And so in my own community, I fully recognize that we don't have big farms, and I acknowledge it. But even then, the people in Vancouver Mount Pleasant, though, understand the importance of agricultural lands and why we need to preserve it. In this last couple of weeks, as Bill 24 has been brought to the floor for debate, in my office alone, we have received over 220 letters or emails urging me as their MLA to represent their voices in this very chamber, to save and to protect agricultural lands, and to say no to Bill 24. Some of the folks have said in the very minimum, what the government's got to do, and what you've got to try to convince the government to do, is to take a step back, to slow down the process, to hear the people out, to hear the people in British Columbia out about what they have to say about agricultural lands and why they value it. And so I want to just put some of their voices here on the record in this legislature, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, one letter from an individual says, I'm gravely concerned by Bill 24, the Agricultural Land Commission Amendment Act. This bill proposes fundamental changes to the ALR that could result in the permanent loss of protected BC farmland. BC farmers, ranchers, and fruit growers have made it clear that they oppose this bill because it is not in their interests. It's being pushed through with no public consultation with the agricultural community, the Agricultural Land Commission, or the people of British Columbia. Thanks to the ALR, British Columbia has maintained a steady number of farms while the rest of Canada has lost about a third of its farms over recent decades. I call on you to defend BC's farmland and reject this dangerous bill. This is just one example of a letter that's come into my office urging us as legislators to say no to Bill 24. So we have an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to slow down the process, to give voice to British Columbians, and let them have a say about what they think about Bill 24. Let them have a say what changes should be made to Bill 24, or for that matter, if Bill 24 should be scrapped, and that we sit together as a community, united from Vancouver Mount Pleasant up all the way through the entire province, to say what our vision is for agricultural lands in British Columbia and how we can go about protecting this valuable source that we have inherited from previous generations. Wouldn't that be something if we were able to do that? Set aside partisan lines and for a change, do something for British Columbians and to respect their voices and do a process that is respectful of the people of British Columbia, Mr. Speaker. And that's what this referral motion would allow for the government to do. And I have no doubt that every single member of the opposition, whether it be the independent member or the Green Party member or the official opposition members, we would all join with the government in that process, and that we would work hard to make sure that we get it right for the people that elected us here, and to ensure that agricultural lands are protected for generations to come, so that your children and your grandchildren and their grandchildren can benefit from this resource that was passed down from our ancestors from so many years ago, Mr. Speaker. The people of Vancouver Mount Pleasant have sent me many, many letters, but let me just put on the record this plea from the Association of Farmers Markets. Now, because we don't have acres and acres of farmland, and we are in that process of understanding, of course, and valuing agriculture and what it means. And one of the things that we get to enjoy in an urban setting are farmers markets. These beautiful markets where farmers come and they set up their produce and their ware in our community, and we get fresh farm produce right out of their farm fields, Mr. Speaker. And it's all throughout different parts of urban setting. And here's what they have to say, Mr. Speaker. The BC Association of Farmers Market wants to convey their concern regarding the lack of public consultation leading up to the announcement of Bill 24 and the resulting impacts on BC's agricultural land reserve. British Columbians are stakeholders in this decision, and our opinions and concerns regarding food, farmers, and farmland must not be underestimated or overlooked in this consultation process. And we're urging you to seriously consider the points that we have outlined below. So let me just put on the record some of their points. As an organization representing 125 farmers markets and 1,000 small-scale farmers selling at markets across BC, we're concerned that our provincial representatives have not considered our members' views in opposition to Bill 24. BC farmers markets work tirelessly in all corners of the province to strengthen local economies and provide British Columbians with fresh, healthy, local agricultural products. Our ability to continue to deliver these benefits into the future, however, is tied directly to the availability of agricultural land throughout the province. As one of our members stated, quote, "Protecting the ALR is central to protecting and enhancing what our local farmers markets exist to support: healthy and strong communities and food systems." Our members' farmers market in the north and interior specifically have expressed concern that Bill 24 would directly threaten their regionally focused agricultural initiatives and thereby threaten the very viability of farmers markets in their area. BC's farmers markets are a rapidly growing sector that contribute $113 million in direct sales to BC's economy in 2012, a 147% increase from $46 million in 2006. The proposed changes in Bill 24 not only threaten the viability of farmers markets, they threaten the economic and social benefits markets deliver to the communities they support. The BC Association of Farmers Market is opposed to giving regional panelists the authority to make initial decision on ALR applications as proposed in Bill 24, since this governance structure was used from 2002 to 2010 and considered less effective than the current centralized administration and vetting of all ALR applications by the ALC, which ensures strong and consistent centralized authority. British Columbians voted for a Liberal government. A campaign promise included, quote, "Yes, we will maintain the excellent relationship we have built with the ALC," end quote. The party also said it will increase funding to the Agricultural Land Commission and would work more closely with farmers, ranchers, and agricultural organizations to preserve agricultural land. We regret that these promises have not been followed through. In an era of climate change, significant urban expansion, concerns about local food supply, food safety, and sustainability, the BC Government and Agricultural Land Commission must look at ways to encourage farming. Permitting non-agricultural industrial activities on ALR land will only fragment and degrade remaining viable land, leading to greater challenges for farmers in accessing agricultural land. That being said, we support changes that will specifically help farm and ranch operations to be financially successful. With a dramatic increase in popularity of farmers markets of 46% from 2006 to 2012, our farmers markets need more farmers, not less. They are the primary reason that markets exist. This is more than just a farming issue, and our farmers markets are at the center of it. The BC Association Farmers Market requests that the government not vote to enact Bill 24 and its amendments, and that changes to the ALR take place in consultation with the agricultural community as a whole. So this is a letter that came from the BC Association of Farmers Markets, and was signed by the President, John Bell. This letter has been sent to all MLAs, including the Premier, so everyone has a copy of it. I think that they have highlighted all the key points as to why that the government should support this referral motion, why we should step back and not just ramrod through Bill 24. Mr. Speaker, I was dismayed earlier today when I heard from the House Leader that not only is the government determined that they would not support this referral motion, it appears to me, because the government is intent to actually bring in closure of this bill. And the Deputy Premier is saying, absolutely, that is their intent. And it goes to show that the minister and the government is actually not paying any attention to what British Columbians have to say. And it also goes to say that the government doesn't care. They don't care about the very fact that they did not do proper consultation on Bill 24. They don't care about the very fact that before the election and during the election, that they promised that they would actually protect agricultural lands, that they actually answer yes to a questionnaire with respect to this question. They don't care about any of those things. They don't care that British Columbians want to be heard and be respected about this. They don't actually care that British Columbians want to be consulted on the future of agricultural lands in British Columbia, Mr. Speaker. And that somehow, to the minister and to this government, is democracy. That somehow, that this is how the government wants to set the tone of how they want to do business for the next 3 years going forward in the province of British Columbia. I would ask the minister to step back and take a sober second thought around that. Because it's not just us urbanites who oppose to Bill 24, who want the government to support the referral motion. Other organizations like the BC Cattlemen's Association, they too want the government to take a step back. And that is actually not an urban center at all. When I talked about the pack of meat that we go to a grocery store to buy, well, the meat didn't just magically appear on the shelf. They actually comes from the cattlemen's associations and their hard work, and all the farmers and the ranchers and all the people who invest their life in that industry in creating this food source. They want the government to step back to do this. So if the government doesn't want to listen to us, so be it. I accept that from time to time, I really do. But I would ask the minister to consider the voices of British Columbians that go far and beyond in this chamber, that goes more than what the minister's few points of view that they have heard. And I know that the Minister of Core Review is pushing this through come hell or high water, but I would urge the minister to step back and to just take a second sober thought in this process, and to step back and stand down on ramrodding through this bill. Step back and accept the referral motion, and let us work together in a collaborative way, in a respectful way, to hear the voices of British Columbians. And let us together bring forward a bill that will truly reflect the wishes of British Columbians around the future of agricultural lands for generations to come. With that, Madam Speaker, I'm going to take my place, and I will await the Deputy Minister to stand up to speak to this bill, because I would love to hear his voice
Thank you,
on the
Member.
record.